Hi, I'm Dr. David Purvis. I'm in Marrakesh, Morocco for the 2013 European Association of Behavioural and Cognitive Therapies Conference. One of the reasons I'm here is to talk about Blues Be Gone because I'm presenting some data which shows that it's a really effective treatment for depression and anxiety. But I'm also here to learn. It's a 3 or 4 day conference and there are delegates here from 60 countries, over 1,200 people. And it's great to talk to people about what they're doing in CBT, to find out the new stuff, the innovations, the novel interventions and the things which are really effective and powerful. But you know, it's also interesting to revisit old truths. And sometimes as therapists, we're so focused on helping people to not experience negative emotions that we forget that negative emotions are actually quite normal. It's quite normal to feel down, to feel threatened, to feel a bit anxious, to feel sad, to feel happy and to feel joyous. It's normal to feel this whole range of emotions. What's not normal is for the emotions to persist past the experience which created them in the first place. You see, emotions are messages. They tell you you need to do something, and when the validity of that message passes, of course, the emotion needs to subside. But often, what happens is we get stuck in a particular emotional state long after the reason for that emotional state disappeared. The other night, I went into the souk in the centre in Medina, the centre of Marrakesh, and we walked down narrow artisanal streets with little workshops on each side. And it's full of people, and there are motorbikes going backwards and forwards, whipping up and down this narrow passageway, quite dark. And I thought to myself, goodness me, you could get run over here. I thought I'd be lucky to come away with 10 toes at the end of the experience. I felt a bit anxious, I felt a bit threatened, I felt watchful and wary, and I was paying attention to what's going on. But you know what? That's quite normal, because it was an unusual experience. And then we got out into the souk itself, and there are just thousands and thousands of people just milling around doing all sorts of things, from snake charmers to acrobats. It was really a cacophony, an overload of the senses. So, I'm a displaced person. It's unusual. I've never experienced anything like that. I'm watchful, I'm wary, I'm paying attention. Okay, that's perfectly normal. When I get back to the hotel, I just think of it as an exciting and interesting and novel experience. I don't continue to feel anxious. So my brain said, in the first instance, this is a bit different, this is a bit unusual, let's pay attention to what's going on, let's just sort of keep everything in vision and keep everything in track and make sure you don't get your pocket picked or anything like that. When I left the souk, it said, fine, that's all finished now, let's relax. So the message, my brain sent me the message to switch on my attentional system to pay attention. And then afterwards it sent me a message to say, okay, all finished, now we can relax. But sometimes that second message doesn't get sent. Sometimes the attentional system, sometimes the anxiety system gets switched on, but then it doesn't get switched off. And if you struggle with anxiety over the longer term, or if you often feel anxious, my suggestion is that your anxiety system has remained switched on. Your brain hasn't sent you the message that you no longer need to feel anxious. So, if that's the case, what we need to do is we need to figure out what it is you're anxious about. It can be sometimes quite difficult to figure out what you're anxious about, but there isn't any way around it. We need to figure it out because your brain is basically saying you need to feel threatened. Okay, what do you need to feel threatened about? You need to figure that out. If you can't figure out what you need to feel threatened about, maybe you don't need to feel threatened about anything at all. In which case, we need to find a way to send a stop signal to your brain. We need to basically say, actually, do you know what? I don't need to feel anxious. Not, I don't want to feel anxious. I wish I didn't feel this way. I hate feeling like this. Not that. No, we need to say, actually, you know what? I don't need to feel anxious because there's no threat. That's the kind of stop signal that your brain is more likely to respond to. So, to recap, an emotion is a message that tells you need to do something. If you feel anxious, your brain is saying you need to feel threatened. You need to feel aroused, watchful, wary, on guard, prepared for some kind of threat. Do you? Most people don't. In fact, the world in which we live, most people don't need to feel threatened, anxious, watchful, or wary, really very much at all. If you don't need to feel threatened, then let's send a stop signal to the brain to switch off the threat. We forget and we get used to feeling in a particular way, but actually a lot of anxiety, I think, is simply a habit of sensation, a habit of thought. You just get used to something and you forget to say, well, actually, hang on, do I need to feel this way? Take some time, figure out what it is you're anxious about. If you don't need to be anxious, if there's not anything actually that you need to be anxious about, make a stop signal, something like, I don't need to be anxious today. There isn't anything I'm threatened by, and in fact, I am perfectly safe. And start to send that signal to your brain to switch off the emotion of threat. Because, at its baseline, anxiety is no overestimation of threat. If you don't have to feel anxious, well then send a stop signal to switch off the message. I hope you found this information interesting and potentially useful. I'm Dr. David Purvis in Marrakesh.